Hi,
Hi.
I'm Zach.
Hey, that's my name. You stole my identity again.
Yeah, I forgot the next
Oh,
couple.
sorry.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's discussion of Antiphrum. We appreciate you being here, and we're going to talk about education. So feel free to pitch in, to question our authority, because we have none, and
That's true.
to question our questions, because we do question.
It's working.
It's working.
Yeah.
The audio is not terrible like
Yay.
the first time.
That was really bad.
We're never going to oppose that. We are always going to oppose that, but we're never going to impose that upon you again. Our apologies.
I'm trying to come up with another pose pun, and it's not coming. I'm sorry. I should turn my phone off.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. And anyway, we wanted to start off, I wanted to start off, at least today, by clarifying something from last week's broadcast. I got a question from Angela, who was asking how the apprenticeship was different than the internship. And I gave her an answer that was decent, but I realized that I didn't give her the answer that I feel is most important. And that is that in my model, the apprenticeship model that I have, the main difference is that the degree that you get is not that important. What's more important is the skills that you have gained through the apprenticeship. So that's the main distinction. So with an internship, as we now have it, you're going to get a degree and you go to the internship and you might learn some valuable skills to your field and to a position that maybe one day you'll have. But your focus is probably the degree. And in my alternative model, it's you go to the internship, your focus is on the skills, the practical on-the-job skills, because really when you get a job in a career, most of your training is in practical on-the-job skills. That's what your employer wants to make sure that you have, so he gives you that training. Interesting. Anyway, and so the focus isn't on the degree, which I question if that's really, if degree-focused education is really the most valuable, optimal way of doing education, because I don't believe it is, which is why I question it.
I agree. Which sounds like degree.
It sounds like degree a lot.
But it's not. It just means that I agree. So, sorry. So we wanted to talk a little bit about why a degree actually isn't a good indication of whether or not you'll be successful. And we believe there are other indications as to whether or not you'll be successful. The biggest one being whether or not you're successful. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. If you then clarify it.
Okay. So it doesn't make sense. Okay, so the what I mean by that is that let me gather my scattered thoughts and put them into words. So when a person gets a degree, it means they've taken certain classes. When a person gets, and then they've passed them. When a person gets good grades, it means that they have showed hard work and dedication to getting good grades, and not really to anything else. So I don't really, I feel almost as though the only time it would be appropriate to look at a person's degree when hiring them is when you want them to get good grades. Like you're paying them to get good grades because that's what they know how to do. Now, of course, they've learned stuff along the way. I'm not saying that. But if a person, yeah, that's all I'm saying. Is that if you pass a class, that means you have shown dedication to passing the class. But passing a class and then doing stuff in the real world are totally different skills. Inquiring totally different approaches and whatnot. Does that make sense now? Have I clarified it appropriately?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that success is goal focused.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, totally.
And so,
so you're successful if you reach the goal that you set.
yeah. So getting good grades is one goal.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a goal that I have because my delusion is that getting good grades will help me reach my other goals that I have.
Your delusion?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because whether that is true or not, I actually don't know. But that's what motivates me to do that, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so, yeah. So
Okay.
that's what you're saying, right? Is that success should be measured by goals and reaching those goals, not by one goal and reaching that goal.
So yeah, like so for example, if your goal is to write a book, you won't know if you're ever going to get the book published based on the grades you got in the school. You're going to find out when you try to publish the book and then do or don't. So, yeah. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I think that further
Sweet.
further goes to clarify what we mean.
Okay.
Which is basically, well, what you mean, I think, which is basically that getting good grades is a goal.
Yeah, it is a goal.
But not everyone has that goal.
Or should.
Or should.
Because if that was like Steve Jobs' goal, then we wouldn't have Simon's phone. At least not the way it is. Well, we certainly wouldn't have that one.
Yeah. And so, sorry, I'm being terrible. And so, okay. And so, the point is, if you have goal X of being successful in a certain field, that doesn't necessitate that you have goal Y of, getting good grades.
So sometimes that would be appropriate, though. Like if your goal is, I want to be a dentist, yeah, you kind of need to pass medical school, and that requires getting good grades.
Well, you need to pass it.
Yeah. You totally need to pass it.
Which is not what I consider good grades, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, cool. Well, you need to pass the school at least.
But, and so that is a problem that I have, because you can be a completely competent dentist and not pass dental school.
Do you have a pen for this board?
Yeah.
Can I borrow it? Can I erase this board? I just wanted to illustrate a thing.
If your goal are different than what goals are required to pass dental
I'm
school.
erasing Opportunity Rats. By the way, this episode is brought to you by Opportunity Rats.
.com.
Okay. This is a very dirty whiteboard. Okay. So, you can keep talking if you had anything. I'm going to try to draw something that illustrates, because I'm a visual person, meaning that you can see me and that I can see you. No, that means that I convey information and retain information better when it's visual. So I'm going to try to explain why I only have like a goal of reaching a certain grade level. That makes sense. If that's cool. Okay.
Go for it.
Okay. So you should talk while I draw this.
How long is it gonna take you?
I don't know. Give me 1 second. I'll figure it out.
Okay. Fascinating. Yeah, I'm very goal focused. So success definitely has to do with my subjective goals rather than the objective goals that the subjective goals that society has placed on me to be my objective goals.
So what do you mean by that? You mean like... Wait, say it again? Sorry.
So I believe in goal-focused success, which means that my success is determined by reaching goals, right?
Yeah, your goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Which isn't. There are exceptions to that rule, but
Maybe we should talk a little bit about what goals we're referring to, so that it's clear. So, like, for example, we're talking about like life goals. Like, I have these goals and dreams and visions and things I want to accomplish, and that's what I'm talking about with my goals. And so, in order to get to that's the goal I'm talking about. Like, I want to do X, Y, and Z with my life. It's not necessarily like, yeah, big things. Like, yeah, I'd like to try to publish a book someday. That'd be kind of fun. Something like that, you know? So that's one of the goals that I work for on a generally regular basis, is learning how to write and write well and find out how to, yeah. I hope that made sense. This is kind of a rambling one. Sorry. Okay, so this is a bad diagram. I'm going to start over with a different diagram. Okay, I have this theory. This is Zach's capacity. Boop, 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 boop. That's Zach's theme song. This is a bar illustrating Zach's capacity. And for the sake of discussion and for the theory, this bar right here represents demands of getting an A. Ta-da! Wait. It's hard to do this backwards. So they're the same size, right? Cool. Guess what? I don't need an A to get to my goals. Because once I passed, it looks the same as a D, for example. I'm not saying I have a bunch of Ds. But getting the demands of like a B as like half, there's half, right? In the end, it's the same result, whether I got an A or a B, I think, generally speaking. It depends. It depends on what your goals are, of course, because if you want to, like, be a teacher, you have to have good grades. If you want to be, like, I don't know. There's certain things that you will want to have good grades for. I don't know that I need a lot of them. I just need to pass at a certain level to reach my goals. So instead of focusing on getting an A, I'd focus on this, because that leaves me with, like, this other half of a bar to do other things that I think are more important than getting an A, because it's kind of a waste of my effort if I'm spending half of my bar of energy on getting an A when a B will suffice for my goals. Hopefully that made sense.
No, that made sense.
Okay, good. Hopefully that was what we were talking about. I think it kind of was. It might have been tangential. I apologize.
Oh, tangential. Just kidding.
Oh, speaking of tangents. Did we stray from our topic? We did, didn't we? Where's your topic?
What?
Where's the...
Oh.
So why degrees don't matter? Well, that wasn't at all what we just talked about. My bad.
So what do you think? Why do you think, Zach, that degrees aren't like the optimal way of showing competency in a job position?
Well, it's kind of just the same thing I mentioned before, is that if you have a degree, it shows that you're dedicated to passing classes. But classes aren't really what the world is like at all. I mean, it's kind of a different animal altogether. Like life outside of school versus life in school. So if you have a degree, it shows that you are dedicated to passing school, and implying that you've picked up other stuff along the way.
Oh.
Does that make sense?
In what ways can you think of that classes are not like life? What do you mean by that?
Well, for classes are not like life. In what way? Good question. Okay, well, for example, the rest of my life isn't at a desk. And I'm pretty sure, I mean, some people have desk jobs, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're not in a classroom anymore. They're not like in rows listening to a teacher lecture or whatever. In real life, you have your phone and your computer and everything else you want access to, whereas in a classroom, they're like, yeah, don't look at your notes for this test. Does that... So, like... Yeah, in real life, you have the answers to the test, which isn't actually there. Answers to the things you need to know with the internet and whatnot. Whereas in a classroom, you can't check your notes on to pass the test and stuff like that. That's one way that school is different than real life.
Sure.
So for example, not for example, that was the example. For the application then, to like where's the, so when you have a degree or when you pass a class, it shows that you can pass a test without your notes, at least for the time that you pass the test, because I forget everything right afterward. But instead, what if all of our classrooms or education systems had this is interesting. So like instead of being about like memorizing and passing tests, it was like, here's the resources you need, here's all the information. Like in the real world where I have a laptop, I can look up anything I need to. I have books and a library and whatever. And they say, okay, here's everything. Now produce this. Like produce a product, make something of it. Something that would be useful to the world. And so if that was kind of the education system, if we were teaching people how to use the information to produce things instead of just making them get information in their head, then I think that'd be a much more effective education than the one we have now. Is that on track? Does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It does. So you're saying that basically your views of the educational system, specifically regarding degrees, are that they're there as a marker of information assimilated or information learned.
Yeah.
And that they don't actually show ability to produce, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's right.
Or ability to use that information.
Uh-huh.
Interesting.
Thank you for making that succinct. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's not one.
That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, that's what you meant.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with that perspective, actually.
Okay. That's okay.
And I think a lot of educators are frustrated with that perspective as well.
Okay. Now tell me what you're thinking then.
Because I actually think, especially, well, maybe it was just my specific educational background, but they seem to put a lot of emphasis, especially at our current school, on critical thinking,
True.
on analysis and production. So that's why we do things like essays,
yeah,
and things like that.
So maybe an essay then is an attempt to do what I was saying.
Yeah, that's why I feel that's one of the reasons. Like, so essays are slightly uncomfortable because I'm a perfectionist, but I believe strongly that an essay is actually a good indicator or a good attempt at showing how you can take information and actually produce something and affect change in the world. Right.
That's true. Yeah, I think essays can really affect change in the world. Absolutely. That's where a lot of stuff that I read has come from, is essays. So yeah, no, I think that's still in agreement with what I was saying, though, because maybe I didn't recognize the essay as being a product that we can, like, being what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't think that. But that totally is, because they give us information, right? And then they... Well, see, that's a cool thing, actually, is that we actually do have that already. Like, if you're writing a research paper, you do have research.
Yeah.
And you do have access to the materials and stuff. I think mostly what I was referring to when I was thinking about my frustrations with the classroom and stuff is when it comes to things like memorized material, like writing it down, afterward and stuff. So, like, instead of, for example, in an ideal, different, crazy, fantastic world, instead of memorizing how to do certain formulas in algebra or something, you're given all the formulas, whatever. You have, like, your cheat sheet, you have the internet, your smartphone, a smart calculator, whatever. And then the class isn't focused on, like, making you memorize all these things because it knows that you'll have access to it afterward. The class is focused on helping you produce something with this knowledge.
Yeah.
Essays do that, you're right. Essays do that. So, like, they give you things and then they make you produce something. So essays are a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Woohoo!
So whenever you have to write an essay, just think that you finally get an opportunity to produce something. to use what you've been studying critically and effectively and appropriately, and it might be the most beneficial, the most important part of the class, because it has a high carryover skill-wise to the real world. Because really an essay is just taking the opportunity to think critically.
It is.
About your subject and application of it, right? So think about that. But yeah, also, I think you bring up a good point that maybe memorization of facts shouldn't be a big focus of our educational system.
I think it doesn't need to be.
There's certain areas where I feel like memorization, and I don't mean memorization, I mean like assimilation, like learning and understanding an idea or a principle is actually useful, but maybe knowing like the exact facts, maybe something better worth your time is just looking it up when you need it.
Yeah.
And we've actually discussed this before, that if you're goal focused and you're skill production, like position focused, for example, in a position, what you need to memorize, you will memorize through consistent application of it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, like, let's see, what activity can I be doing? Okay.
I was thinking about. I was trying to.
If I'm baking a cake, lots of cakes. If I'm a baker and I'm making this cake over and over again, I will most likely memorize the entire recipe. And it probably won't be from sitting down and looking at the recipe or using other memorization techniques that are good. There are good memorization techniques. But I'll memorize it because I've applied it consistently over and over and over again. And in that way, say I'm a baker who makes multiple cakes, I will have the exact information memorized through application over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think so. Because, yeah, as you make the cake over and over again, you're like, you don't have to keep going, how many cups of sugar do I put in this,
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, you just know because you do it all the time.
Yeah.
But if you ever don't know, it's right there in front of you still.
Yeah, you can look it up.
Yeah.
And so through application, the process is getting more efficient, which is great. But not memorizing it didn't actually keep you from fulfilling the process as end goal. Because the internet and stuff and stuff.
The internet.
Yeah. Do we have stuff? I mean, important input from people who are watching?
Sheridan said hi. Hi. And then Jared Brown said this.
Excellent. Oh, Jared Brown said, on the subject of degrees, a degree in personal opinion, of course. A degree in personal. Does that word say opinion?
Yeah.
Okay, opinion, of course, and
He spelled it right. No, it's
debatable.
not. We're just challenged.
Two different focuses. Is a piece of paper claiming that I know the subject pertaining to the degree in which I have acquired through the studying and tests, not necessary through practice, but in application only. Having an education is a simple building block. Yeah, I totally agree that's what it says. And I should state that I believe that an education is necessary. Absolutely. No matter what you do, an education is necessary. And also impossible not to get. But a degree is not synonymous with education. It's not the same thing.
It's an attempt to facilitate an education.
Yeah.
And in many ways it succeeded, but he made more comments.
Oh.
Or were you finished with that one?
Yeah, I can be finished. Jared says, applied knowledge is experience. That experience turns into wisdom, which is knowing what to do with what you know and understanding where it can be applied. And that's wisdom. Imagine not having a recipe. That's about something different. About the recipe. Yeah. Yeah, I'd say absolutely. That's why I want education in the formal sense to be secondary to application, to experience, I should say. Because as you experience more things, you have the opportunity to practically experience things. Then you gain wisdom, you gain innovation. Because we've talked about before how innovation is the combining of two fields, but it's also the combining of a field with your internal cognitive understanding. So like your memories, your ideas, etc. So part of it is introspection, where innovation comes from. And you have a greater opportunity to innovate if you are in a field longer, or based on the first part, based on your introspective cognitive abilities. Yeah. Not having a recipe, I wouldn't be able to make a cake without a recipe.
Or at least you'd have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
Which would be long and arduous.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. I wouldn't be able to make the exact cake that is on the recipe without the recipe.
True.
But I probably wouldn't place myself in a position where that's necessary without a guide. Because if I had a guide, for example, in like an apprenticeship situation, if I was apprenticing with a baker, he could show me the recipe and I could learn very quickly without actually having to go to like, I don't even know if this is like valid and exists, but like a baking school that teaches me theory of baking. Like, this is how much of this you should add with how much of this. I learned these base principles that I can then apply to whatever cakes I make. That's not cool.
Okay. I am also disconnected from the internet.
Okay, it should be back.
Is it? Cool.
Yeah.
Well.
But yeah, thank you, Jared. Oh gosh. Thank you, Jared, for that input. It's very valuable. I appreciate it. Okay.
Cool. I think that's all the material I have on that.
Okay.
Unless you have anything else.
I think that we can basically, I think we can basically be done for today. We have some ideas for things to come. Today was a little more jumbled,
It was a little more
than
jumbled.
we intended it to be.
But we got rolling in the right direction that we wanted to.
But we'll see you next week, and it'll be great. And just have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day.
Also, you can continue to comment and ask questions. Search for this on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel, Simon Says 314.
Yeah, we got that.
Yeah.
Is it still going?
Oh, is it?
Keep going.
Okay.
Simon Says.
Simon Says 314. And just, if there's one thing that we should get out of what we're trying to convey, is that you should go and do what you're passionate about as much as possible. And as long as you have goals that you're passionate about, and those goals will sustain you, then you're set, right?
Yeah, because you'll get them if you want them.
Okay.
The end.